Alright, and hello and welcome back. Now, in this video, it's going to be a little bit different. As you can tell from the title of the video, this is not going to be where I code. I'm actually just going to explain what I've done, because I can't reproduce what I've done from memory. And if I do it from a script, then obviously it is not actually live coding. It is just me doing it from a script. So I actually had some problems. I had to remove this down here because this wasn't updating correctly. And as you can see, I've added the attribute data key so that I can access the array element whenever I attempt to remove it. And I also added this list item to every single one of them. I just added the data key attribute to improve how I removed it. Now, with that in mind, as you can see, this has its own function now. It's reloading the render like this one is loading the render, and I was actually informed by a few developer friends that I should not be mixing jQuery and React, which I find particularly odd, and I kinda understand it, but at the same time I don't. I mean, the reason why you see me not using pure React here is because, like I said at the very beginning of these videos, I am very new to React. So what I am doing is I am actually making up for what I don't know how to do in React with my knowledge of jQuery. So what you have here is whenever the list is clicked on, it first grabs the value, which is of course the index of the position it is in that particular array, and then I also grab the data key attribute value, which lists the array itself. And then I pass the key down here, and this is just to pass something really, because both of these can be referenced outside of the switch statement, but I had to reference at least something in order for this to work. Otherwise, for some odd reason, it would glitch. And I was told that if you use jQuery with React, that your JavaScript will do some weird stuff. But at the same time, once again, I don't really understand why that is, because React is supposed to be a virtual DOM and a view manipulator and a view provider, and jQuery is just an API to shorten the syntax of React itself. And no, excuse me, actually yeah, it does do that. Sorry, I got lost in my thoughts. It does shorten the syntax required to do React, I believe. I'm not entirely sure if React is built with jQuery in it, but I know that it's supposed to shorten what you have to type in raw JavaScript. That's like the go-to language after you learn JavaScript. Is once you learn JavaScript, then you learn jQuery to make your life easier. And then what I'm doing here is I'm using a switch statement, which will grab the initial value and then grab that one. Now, this is actually a little bit buggy, and I've been told that it's probably because I am mixing jQuery with React. Because what will happen is, say we add a whole bunch, and I click on the first one, it'll remove all of them. But say I click a whole bunch of times again, and I go down to the bottom one, it'll remove that bottom one, and then it'll remove that, and then it'll remove that. So it's actually working, but there's a bug in there for some reason that it's grabbing all of them, even though I'm telling it to only grab one value. And so that is not what we would call a user error. I believe that's what we would call a compile error. And if it's an error that occurs in the compiler, it's extremely difficult to fix. But since my entire point was so that I could add something and to remove something, and I didn't really specify whether I wanted to add something and then be able to remove them all or not, then yeah, obviously I can get away with this little bug for right now. I'm probably going to fix this in the future, but I'm not going to include it in the video because it does its purpose. It does remove what I select. And then if for some odd reason, and I always do this with everything, if the function doesn't work for some reason, I always have a catch. So if they manage to somehow inject their own code into this, by default this will console.log. So I always do that. It's just it's a practice that I was taught, and that's why I do that. And then because this is in its own function and it is a separate DOM event handler, we have to re-render the view. Now, I noticed that I'm re-rendering the view a lot, and I was told again by my developer friends that in the very beginning, your first instinct is to re-render everything because you don't know how to manipulate state. Now, in the next video or a video leading further down where I don't have a developer talk or a language tutorial, I'm going to try to think of a project that I can do where we manipulate just the state. Because if they're telling me that I'm using React wrong, and that I need to focus particularly on the state, then I want to build a project specifically building with state in mind. And that's something that you should do with every single one of your projects, is always try to explore something that you are not used to. Okay, so as you can see, this handles the removal of any item, and then we reload the DOM, and that's that. And let's see, is there anything else that I added here? Ah, yes. This is actually a purely, it is a manipulation of the CSS, because whenever I first did this, these had default heights, and I wanted to control the height. So with this, I'm able to expand the list indefinitely, and this is what I did to fix it on the smartphone. Now obviously there are phones that are skinnier than this, but I mean, if I were to develop for every phone on the planet, then I would obviously be making a bajillion different media queries, and I don't want to do that. So I just developed it for my own smartphone. And so, you know, every time that something is added, the amount of items in the array is multiplied by 50 and then concatenated with pixel inside of the list element itself. And you'll see that right here. Here we are. And what I mean by the list element itself is this big box is manipulated so that whenever something is added, it increases by 50 pixels for every item that is added. So right now it is 50 pixels. It's 50 pixels big, plus whatever attributes this has had on it. And then this is 100 and this is 150. And that's what I did for that. Now, over here, it's not much. I made a media query right here and save that. And what I did was I changed I didn't change much. As you can see here, I did this, and this is because I wanted the box to not change. So this was something that I added. And what that is I go into the unordered list, the parent of the list, and I added overflow hidden, so it hides the overflow once it goes past the box. And then overflow Y, which is going up and down, is set to scroll. And I believe I think you might be able to edit it in Chrome, but you have to do some finagling in order to actually edit it so that it looks nice. And this was just a project where I wanted to make a multi-to-do list. It wasn't a full-scale project. I mean, I could obviously spend a couple more days trying to figure out how to design my own scroll bar, which would be fun, but I just don't want to do that right now. And so now that the overflow is hidden and the overflow of Y is set to scroll, it of course becomes scrollable. Now, in this media query, I did a few things. The first thing I did was actually change the width of main, I believe, because the width of main up here is 50. And 50 is half of whatever the current page size is, right? So it extends with the pace very nice. Now I did 90 because this tablet or the screen that holds this is going to want it to be an equal distance of pixels. So it's essentially just extending that. And then, let's see. I think I changed the height too. Yeah, the height here was very specific, right? I changed the height here because I wanted a smaller box. I wanted the box to fit on the screen most of the time. So I just changed the height to be 100%. And if we removed that, that's what you would get. So, and then of course I had the background, and I just repeated this just because. Actually, I think I should be able to remove that. It should just inherit it. Yeah, okay. Useless code. Now, I did change the method for this because on a phone screen, unless you make the text really, really small, those types of boxes just don't fit on a phone screen. And you actually see that in my application that I use, that this project was based off of, that the text is usually 8 pixels to 10 pixels large. So it was in fact very small text. And with this, I wanted it to be the same exact text size so that anybody could see it. Oh, I just noticed that. That's weird. I wonder why it's doing that. Oh, I think it's because of the letters that are trailing off. But yes, I wanted the letters to be exactly the same size so that it could be viewable pleasantly on the phone. And then I actually had to change the list order itself, the way the boxes were, so I had to rerun display flex on it and then use the flex direction of column. And in order for a div to be manipulated in an ever-changing pixel size, it actually has to be an inline block. And then of course I had to set the height to the initial value that it started with. Now the reason why you can only edit the div in terms of height whenever you apply the property display inline block is because when you have multiple lines, which is display block, when you have multiple lines, the attribute is added to each line that you've done. So HTML is designed so that you only mess around with the content box. So you got the margin, the border, the padding, and the content, right? So if HTML were to make it so that you could manipulate it while it was a block, you would be manipulating all four of those layers at the same time, which is way too complex. You don't need something like that. And it's just easier to have it to where you just need to change it to display inline block, which is saying that it's a block within one line of code, and just manipulating that block. And of course I manipulate it so that it is a 100% width, and I reset the parent unordered list to an overflow of initial because I didn't want the scroll bars, because I had the feature where you just kept adding stuff. And then of course this is just me really changing the size of the buttons and the size of the text. And as you can see, I went from font size, I believe 2 rem down to 1.5 just to make it a little bit smaller. I suppose I could make it even a little bit smaller, but I wanted to keep this the same size on a tablet. And that was it. Those are all the changes I made to this application. I said that the last thing I wanted to do was add the feature to remove the items that I added. Now I could easily go on and make this more complicated by adding in a cookie feature or a storage feature or a login application that stores the information in a database. But to be honest, I don't want to do that with this application. I just wanted to replicate the features of this application so that I could use React. But I could easily make this more complicated than it currently is. Why did I grab that? I don't think I need to grab that. I think that's useless code. Oh man. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm finding that there are parts that don't need to be here. Yeah, it's still buggy. Oh well. Alright, so that's it for this project. We have created a multi-to-do list. You can add whatever you want in any of the boxes. You can delete them. You can delete them all. You can just delete one by going in an orderly manner. So long as you complete the bottom ones first. I suppose I could reverse the array so that it displays differently, but then it'll still have the same bug. It looks pretty much identical to the My Effectiveness app. I mean, let's take a look at that picture. I mean, this is a much nicer version, and like I said, I don't want to fully replicate what they had. I just wanted to, because they have it to where theirs is a nice UI, and you can add a quick action, and it's a very good application, and I absolutely love it, and I'm glad that it is actually a free application because it helps me out a lot. But yeah, so I use Bootstrap colors, and my colors are in a different order, and I add things differently because in this application what you can do is you can select the urgency, and you can also click on one of these buttons to add the action to a specific one. And as you can see, it's got a very nice animation the black bar there, if you click on the different boxes, that'll be the one you add the action to. In mine, it's just you type and then you click one of the buttons. Mine is very simple, and they took some time with, and it was very nice. Alright, so there we go. That is the update for this video, and I'll see you in the next week. See you later. Bye bye. I'm tired. I'm really tired. It's like 5 a.m. Why am I making this video?